This video explains which types of nuts can negatively impact your cardiovascular health after the age of 60, and why certain preparation methods and specific nut varieties pose distinct risks to the aging heart. To understand why some nuts can be detrimental, we must first establish the medical baseline of how these energy-dense foods interact with the aging human cardiovascular system. For decades, clinical guidance on human nutrition was based on a very different understanding of dietary fat. If we look back to the period before the 1990s, nuts were generally restricted in heart-healthy diets. The reasoning was simple. Nuts are high in total fat, and at that time, medical consensus viewed all fat as a potential contributor to arterial blockages. However, a major paradigm shift occurred in 1992 with the publication of the pioneering Adventist health study. This research provided the first major epidemiological observation that directly linked frequent nut consumption to a lower risk of fatal coronary heart disease and myocardial infarction. It was a turning point that proved the type of fat matters more than the quantity. Following another decade of research, the United States Food and Drug Administration formally approved a health claim in 2003. This update stated that consuming 42 grams, or about 1.5 ounces of nuts per day, may reduce the risk of heart disease. Today, major regulatory bodies like the FDA and the World Health Organization actively recommend nuts for the prevention of cardiovascular disease. Modern medical consensus confirms that frequent raw, unsalted nut consumption is highly beneficial. Data from the PREDIMED trial demonstrated that consuming 30 grams of raw nuts per day significantly lowers the risk of major heart events, including a 45% reduction in stroke risk. Furthermore, large-scale data from 2017 shows that eating nuts twice a week is associated with up to a 23% lower risk of coronary heart disease. But for those over 60, the package the nut comes in and the hidden chemistry inside can change everything. A common misconception is that the high calories in nuts automatically lead to weight gain, which is a primary stressor for an aging heart. However, clinical trials repeatedly show that raw nuts do not predispose individuals to obesity. To understand why, think of a raw nut as a locked safe. The healthy monounsaturated fats are the treasure inside, but they are physically trapped within fibrous cell walls, which act like the steel walls of the safe. Your body does not have the mechanical key to open every single cell during digestion. This means a significant portion of the fat is never absorbed into your bloodstream. It simply passes through your system and is excreted. Furthermore, the protein and fiber act as a biological satiety signal to your brain. The cardiovascular risks only begin when we break the safe through heavy processing or when we ignore the toxic thresholds of specific minerals. The first category that can damage the heart after age 60 is heavily salted nuts. To understand this risk, we must look at the sodium-potassium pump, which is a fundamental biological mechanism in your cells. Think of your cardiovascular system as a home plumbing system. Your heart is the main pump, and your arteries are the pipes that deliver life-sustaining fluid to every room in the house. Sodium acts like a chemical sponge that pulls water into your pipes. When you consume heavily salted nuts, you flood your system with excess sodium. This triggers your adrenal glands to alter their hormone signals, forcing your kidneys to enter a retention mode. In this state, your kidneys hold onto sodium and flush out potassium. This chemical imbalance forces your body to retain massive amounts of water to dilute the salt, which rapidly increases your overall blood volume. For an adult over 60, this increase in blood volume is like turning the water pressure in an old house up to a dangerous level. It places immense direct mechanical stress on the heart muscle and the structural walls of the arteries. Because the aging cardiovascular system is often less flexible due to arterial stiffness, this high-pressure plumbing is a direct driver of hypertension and heart failure. While some people are more salt-sensitive than others, the clinical consensus for seniors is uniform. Minimizing added salt is a necessary precaution to prevent the mechanical wear and tear that leads to a stroke. The second dangerous category consists of candied, sugar-coated, or honey-roasted nuts. Processing nuts with added sugars completely negates their natural low glycemic health benefits. When sugar is added to these fats, it contributes directly to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. In an aging body, excess sugar does not just add empty calories. It acts like metabolic rust inside your engine. It triggers systemic inflammation and promotes the accumulation of visceral fat, which is the dangerous fat that wraps around your heart and internal organs. Unlike the fiber safe of a raw nut, the sugars on a candied nut are absorbed instantly into the bloodstream. This forces the heart to function in a sludge-like metabolic environment, significantly increasing the long-term risk of coronary artery disease. For a senior heart that requires clean and efficient fuel, these sugar-coated options create a continuous, elevated metabolic workload that leads to heart failure. The third variety is the Brazil nut. This risk is unique because it does not come from an added ingredient, but from a naturally occurring trace mineral called selenium. Think of selenium as a precision thermostat. You need it to keep the house at the right temperature, but the setting must be exact. Selenium is a vital antioxidant that protects the heart, but the window for safety is incredibly narrow. Brazil nuts have the highest selenium concentration of any food on Earth. A single Brazil nut can contain up to 288 micrograms of selenium, while the strict tolerable upper limit for an adult is only 400 micrograms. If you eat just 4 or 5 Brazil nuts in a single sitting, you can quickly enter the zone of selenosis, or selenium toxicity. Advanced metabolic profiling shows that high selenium levels are directly associated with an increased risk of hypertension. In severe cases, this toxicity can cause the heart's electrical system to misfire, leading to dangerous cardiac arrhythmias. Because the margin between a healthy dose and a toxic dose is so small, medical literature specifies that for seniors, the maximum dosage is strictly 1 to 2 Brazil nuts per day. The fourth category involves macadamia nuts, specifically regarding portion control. Macadamias derive about 75% of their total energy from fat, which is the highest percentage of any edible nut. Think of macadamia nuts as high-octane racing fuel. If you are an athlete moving at high speeds, this fuel is useful. But for a senior whose metabolism may be idling or slower, this excess energy has nowhere to go. While 82% of the fat in macadamias is healthy monounsaturated fat, they also contain a higher concentration of saturated fat than most other nuts. Because they are small and palatable, it is very common for people to consume 600 calories, nearly a full meal's worth, in just a few minutes of mindless snacking. For adults over 60, this caloric density leads to rapid weight gain, which acts as a primary physical and mechanical stressor for the heart. While macadamias can lower bad LDL cholesterol, they only do so if they replace other unhealthy fats in your diet. If they are added on top of a regular diet, the caloric overload strains the entire cardiovascular system. The current medical consensus is that the heart after 60 needs the nutrients found in nuts, but it requires deliberate management of how they are consumed. International practice guidelines recommend that older adults consume roughly 30 to 42 grams of raw, unsalted nuts daily for primary and secondary heart protection. By choosing raw over roasted, you keep the fibers safe intact, ensuring your body does not absorb excess calories. By avoiding salt, you protect your plumbing from high-pressure mechanical damage. By skipping sugar, you prevent the metabolic rust that leads to arterial decay. And by respecting the precision thermostat of Brazil nuts and the energy density of macadamias, you ensure that these powerful foods work for your heart rather than against it. Stick to the raw, natural forms to get the maximum nutritional benefit with the least amount of cardiovascular stress. Stay healthy and see you in the next video.